Actor Vic Morrow should have gone down in Hollywood history for two things: playing scary bad guys and as the hero in TV's Combat. Then, an explosive on-set accident catapulted his name into a different kind of story. This gruesome disaster took 3 lives and forever changed the way we make movies. Not many know Vic Morrow is Jennifer Jason Leigh's father, and she likes it that way. Morrow once revealed his darkest secret to his daughter, thinking it would bring them together. Instead, she never forgave him. Stick around for more on that later. Vic Morrow was born on Valentine's Day in 1929 in the Bronx borough of New York City. His parents were both immigrants from Russia, and the family soon moved to Ashbury Park, New Jersey. School wasn't exactly Morrow's strong suit. As a teenager, Morrow was desperately looking for a way out of school, and one quickly arrived. It was the United States Navy. He dropped out of high school and signed up for duty. As it turned out, Morrow may have had an ulterior motive for enlisting. Morrow clearly wasn't dreaming about life in the service. He quickly left the Navy, using the GI Bill to get an education. He chose to study pre-law, and he went to sunny Florida to do it. But Morrow soon found out that there was something he liked even better than being a lawyer. While studying at Florida State, Morrow got a part in a school play. He quickly realized that this was what he wanted to do with his life. He left Florida entirely and headed to New York City, where he started taking acting lessons. Right out of acting classes, Morrow got a coveted role in a touring production of A Streetcar Named Desire. He was playing Stanley Kowalski, the same role that had taken Marlon Brando to great fame. Morrow's career was off to an explosive start, but he wanted more. Working on the stage was great, but he really wanted to make movies. Back in his acting class, Morrow met a fellow thespian named Barbara Turner. The two hit it off and quickly became a couple. Continued career success soon followed. When Morrow got a call to appear in a movie, the two packed their things and made the move to sunny Los Angeles. Their future was bright. No one could have imagined the horrific fate that lay ahead. Even though Morrow had played a very grown-up Kowalski in A Streetcar Named Desire, he was heading back to high school in his first film role. In Blackboard Jungle, he plays a rebellious high school student. When he made the film, he was 26 at the time and looked it. But that wasn't the only problem people had with the film. Blackboard Jungle was controversial, as it showed teen violence in a high school. It was subsequently blamed for an outbreak of vandalism and attacks by teenagers around the world. But for Morrow, it hit even closer to home. He played a stone-cold psychopath in the film, and the character reportedly stuck with him for a long time after filming wrapped. Whatever haunted Morrow so much, MGM clearly liked. They quickly put him in the Western Tribute to a Bad Man. Although he wasn't the titular bad man, he was still playing a villain. The young actor's career was young, but he had started to notice a pattern. Morrow was getting typecast right out of the gate, so he decided to do something about it. Morrow decided to take a huge risk early in his career. Even though he was getting steady work, he said goodbye to MGM and hello to USC. Morrow knew he needed to open up his career choices, so he went back to school and studied directing. But once he finished school, he went right back to acting. After his time at USC, Morrow started to appear in TV shows, and lots of them. He made his way through shows like Telephone Time and Alfred Hitchcock Presents. He also found time to marry his girlfriend. In 1957, actor and writer Barbara Turner became his wife. If Morrow was looking for a way to stop playing the villain, Hell's 5 Hours was certainly not it. In this film, Morrow's character takes his boss's wife and child into a rocket fuel factory and threatens to let the whole thing, and everyone in it, go up in flames. Next, Morrow made a move to a musical, but despite the change in genre, he couldn't shake his typecasting. He appeared in the Elvis Presley film King Creole as, get this, a thug. While the move to a musical did nothing to stop his typecasting, the film ended up being a big hit with audiences. Following the musical with Presley, Morrow dug back mostly into TV work. Sadly, it seemed that most producers and directors still just wanted him to play menacing characters. Morrow was feeling fed up, and then a phone call changed everything. In the early 1960s, Writer-director Robert Parash wanted to make a TV program that showed the reality of men fighting for their country. For his show Combat, he chose to focus on World War II and had two lead actors in mind. They were Rick Jason and Vic Morrow. Morrow was finally going to play a hero, but it wasn't necessarily all he dreamed of. Morrow was hesitant to even sign on for Combat, as he wasn't on board with the pilot script. He did go ahead and film the pilot, but still considered quitting the show in order to preserve his reputation. As it turned out, his co-star, Jason, had a similar problem. Things did not look good for this scrappy little World War II show. So, both leads in Combat, Morrow and Jason, weren't happy with the show's creator and writer. To keep the stars happy, ABC fired Parash and replaced him with a new producer, future New Hollywood pioneer, director Robert Altman. It looked like Morrow was set for a hit series. The focus of Combat was on authenticity. Many of the actors featured in the show, like Morrow, had actual combat experience. To take this a step further, Morrow and other members of the cast had to go through basic training. Another thing that had to be authentic was the acting. Instructors had one main requirement: don't act like John Wayne. Apparently, people who actually went through a battle, which Wayne never did, thought that the Duke's acting wasn't at all realistic. The idea behind Combat was that each episode would focus more on one of the two leads than the other. For this reason, they had to have two different sets of opening credits. One would have Morrow's name on top, and the other would have Jason's. If you want to know which one was more popular, you just need to look at the Philippines. Combat became very popular in the Philippines in the 1970s. Because of the scarcity of TVs in the poor country, fans of the show would gather in the one or two houses in the neighborhood that had a set. But there was only one name they wanted to see when the credits started to roll.
For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factinate member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details.
If the opening credits had Morrow's name above Jason's, the Filipino fans would stay put. If it was the other way around, many would leave. The simple reason was that Morrow's stories had more action and Jason's had more talking. Clearly, Morrow had the juice, and he didn't want to slow down. Combat was an instant success, and Morrow soon found a way to make it even more of a success. He had never forgotten about taking directing classes back at USC, and so he asked producers if he could give directing a chance. They said yes, and Morrow was ready to flex his muscles. Morrow's co-star on Combat, Rick Jason, didn't hold back on his praise. He called Morrow a master director, and even said that a two-part episode of Combat was one of the greatest anti-war films he'd ever seen. This compliment made Morrow feel like he could do anything. But there is a fine line between confidence and hubris. While still making Combat, Morrow decided to try art house filmmaking. He started with an adaptation of a play by a gay French writer, Jean Genet. This was Hot Surveillance, about four prisoners' troubled relationships. For the film script, he turned to someone close at hand. Remember, Morrow's wife Barbara Turner was a screenwriter and actor. The two adapted Hot Surveillance together. And then Spock portrayer Leonard Nimoy got on board. Morrow would direct, and he and Nimoy would co-produce. Like in Combat, Morrow wanted the film to be authentic, and he went to great lengths to do it. To make the performances in his film more authentic, Morrow had a major request for his actors. He got them to spend an astonishing 6 months in the Nevada State Prison. He also got some of the facility's real inmates to work on the film. Morrow was making sure this film would be a success. He even gave it a catchy new title, Death Watch. Morrow's directorial debut has the distinction of being one of the first movies with marketing to gay audiences. Sadly, after its premiere at the San Francisco International Film Festival, it more or less disappeared. Another thing that disappeared was Morrow's marriage. Morrow's marriage didn't quite survive the making of his first film. He and Turner split in 1964. The two had 2 children while married, Carrie Ann and Jennifer Lee. To honor his daughters, he set up a production company and called it Carly. What he made with this company wasn't quite the honor he intended. After making an LGBTQ-focused art house feature that next to nobody saw, Morrow turned to the ever-popular Western genre. The result was A Man Called Sledge, which he filmed in Italy. While filming, the cast came up with a nickname for the film, and it wasn't complimentary. The actors in A Man Called Sledge started calling it A Man Called Sludge. Morrow was both the director and co-writer, so when the lead actor, James Garner, said it was one of his least favorite films, it must have really hurt. Morrow didn't let the failure of A Man Called Sledge bother him. He continued acting in TV series and directing TV movies. He did everything from Mission Impossible to Charlie's Angels. Certainly, this TV work was paying the bills, but it seemed that Morrow was just waiting for a big movie break. One soon came along. In 1974, Morrow got the chance to appear opposite counterculture actor Peter Fonda, who earned a hip following from 1969's Easy Rider. The film was Dirty Mary Crazy Larry, and this time Morrow wasn't going to be a thug, but an officer of the law. Somehow, he still came across as the heavy. Even though Morrow was now on the right side of the law, he was still on the wrong side of this film. Even though Mary and Larry had held up a store, they were more like the heroes of this film. Morrow had the unenviable task of chasing them down. Something eerie happened on the set of Dirty Mary Crazy Larry. The script called for Morrow's character to chase the thieves in a helicopter. Morrow was hesitant to get in the helicopter and said he'd walk off the film if he didn't get $1 million in life insurance. The reason why he did this is more than a little ominous. Everyone on Dirty Mary Crazy Larry wanted to know why Morrow was afraid of getting in the helicopter. He finally gave the reason, and it was a doozy. Reportedly, his exact words were, "I have always had a premonition that I'll be killed in a helicopter crash." Morrow had made a rather accurate prediction about the end of his life. After playing a crazed sheriff in hot pursuit of rebellious hipsters in Dirty Mary Crazy Larry, Morrow got a role in a ABC TV movie called The California Kid. Here, he plays a crazed sheriff in pursuit of a very hip-looking Martin Sheen. It was almost like he'd made the same film twice. Another typecast that Morrow fell into was Crazed Vengeance Seeker. He'd done it back in 1958's Hell's 5 Hours, and then again in 1974 in the South African feature Funeral for an Assassin. Here, he launches an assault on the government. In 1975, Morrow landed a lead role in a provocative TV movie called The Night That Panicked America. This is the movie version of the infamous radio broadcast of War of the Worlds that left many Americans believing that aliens were really invading Earth. Besides aliens, there's something else strange about The Night That Panicked America. This was Morrow's age. In the film, Morrow's character complains that he's 28, but looks 40. When he filmed the movie, he was already 44. In 1976, Morrow appeared in The Bad News Bears opposite Walter Matthau and Tatum O'Neal. Even though Morrow was playing a kid's baseball coach, he was still a bad guy. His character cruelly strikes his own players in the middle of an important game. Morrow also had his own real-life kids to worry about. Remember, Morrow had 2 daughters from his marriage to Barbara Turner. Sadly, the older one, Carrie Ann, went on to have addiction problems. Meanwhile, Morrow's other daughter became even more famous than her dad. Morrow's other daughter had issues with her father. This is single white female actor Jennifer Jason Leigh, and not everyone even knows she is Morrow's daughter. When Morrow's daughter, Jennifer Jason Leigh, was 14, Morrow had a heart-to-heart talk with her. He had to come clean about something regarding her mother. Leigh had no idea what kind of news her father was going to tell her. Morrow told Leigh, on her birthday no less, that when she was 2, Morrow got physical with her mom. and ended up putting her in the hospital. Lee thinks that Morrow told her this so the two would be closer. It didn't go quite as planned. When Lee heard that her father had been abusive with her mother, it really turned her off her father. She didn't want any kind of relationship with him, and she refused to use his last name. From here on, she was Jennifer Jason Lee, Hold the Morrow. In 1982, Morrow got a big break to appear in one segment of Twilight Zone, the movie. The segment's director was John Landis, who'd made a name for himself mostly for comedies like National Lampoon's Animal House and The Blues Brothers. Morrow had no clue that this role would end in disaster. In The Twilight Zone, the movie, Morrow still couldn't escape his typecasting. His character was a definite bad guy, with prejudices against all kinds of people. Through time travel, he has to face the same prejudice, but this time pointed in his direction. Once again, Morrow had concerns about playing such a bad guy. To soften his character, the filmmakers decided to add one more scene. It would have been better if they didn't. In the scene, Morrow's character has time traveled back to Vietnam. He sees an opportunity to save two young children, played by Renee Shin-Yi Chen and Micah Din Lei. That's when cruel fate stepped in. The scene where Morrow saves the two kids involves a helicopter flying over them. Remember, back in 1974, Morrow predicted he'd have a fatal accident in a helicopter while filming Dirty Mary Crazy Larry. Morrow hadn't forgotten his prediction, and now it was worrying him. He complained to a production assistant that he should have asked for a stunt double before the scene. Sadly, he did it anyway. In the scene, Morrow has to carry the two children while a helicopter pursues them. The helicopter was hovering over a mortar effect, and the mortar detonated. That's when everything went wrong. The explosion struck the helicopter and made the pilot lose control. What happened next was an unspeakable accident. While the helicopter was spinning out of control, Morrow accidentally dropped Chen into the water. He reached to pull Chen out when the helicopter landed on all three of them. None of them survived the horrific crash. 3 lives had ended instantly, but the nightmare was just beginning. Following the fatal accident of Morrow and the 2 child actors, authorities took in Landis, Steven Spielberg, because he was one of the producers, the helicopter pilot, and the technician in charge of pyrotechnics. They charged them with involuntary manslaughter, but it was even worse than it seemed at first. What came out later was that the children shouldn't have been in the scene with Morrow, as it was against the law for children to work on films at night. Getting a waiver would have made it legal, but the filmmakers didn't apply for one. And that wasn't even all. The parents of the children Morrow was working with that fateful night were left totally in the dark. Neither of the parents knew that their children would be near any hazardous things like explosives. Many shocking truths came out during the trial. While Morrow and the 2 children were under the helicopter, it became clear that things were getting dangerous. The production manager told the pilot to get out of there. The pilot didn't, and the reason is infuriating. The production manager and the pilot now knew that they had to get the helicopter away from Morrow and the children. Then they heard Director Landis saying, "Get lower, lower." The pilot listened to the director, and tragedy ensued. In the trial, the pilot, Dorsey Wingo, said that he had told Morrow to look up at the helicopter just in case. Morrow didn't, and Wingo went on to say that Morrow had 5 seconds between the time the sound of the helicopter changed and that impact. The question is, what could Morrow do in those 5 seconds? The situation was extremely intense. It was nighttime, and Morrow was responsible for 2 children. They were near some water with the helicopter over top. Suddenly, explosions were going off. It's hard to figure out exactly what Wingo wanted Morrow to do. Later during the trial, Wingo said that he wasn't trying to place any blame on Morrow. Most people agreed that it sounded like he was. Deputy DA Attorney Lee Perwin D'Agostino did not let him get away with it. After all, Morrow wasn't there to defend himself or explain his actions. The tragedy of The Twilight Zone, the movie, resulted in a whole slew of acquittals. Director Landis, helicopter pilot Wingo, the associate producer, and the production manager all walked away from the trial, which lasted 10 months, as free men. Because of the tragic passing of Morrow, Chen, and Lei, Warner Brothers decided to improve safety conditions on all their films. They set up a committee whose sole purpose was to create sets of standards when filmmakers are using dangerous equipment. But that wasn't all. After the terrible tragedy of filming the Twilight Zone movie, the Directors Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild both created anonymous hotlines for their members to use. If they are unsure about the safety of something that's happening on set, they can call for advice. It was too late for Vic Morrow, Renee Shin-Yi Chen, and Micah Dinley, but at least no tragedy of that magnitude has happened in Hollywood since. If you enjoyed this Factinate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. Want a say in who we cover next? Join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.